Seb sat in the living room, his voice heavy with concern. His hands moved expressively as he spoke, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. Seb, Samira, our people are dying needlessly. They need better health care. Samira sighed and shook her head slowly. Even the big men. One of them collapsed and died in the Senate the other day. Seb leaned forward, his frustration evident. He knew what could be done, and yet nothing was changing. Do you know how much these politicians spend abroad on their health each year? That money could be used to develop our hospitals. It would benefit all of them, their families, and the nation. Samira studied him closely. His passion was unmistakable. She had met many politicians, but very few who genuinely cared. National health in this country? Wow. Yes, it is possible. The health system could be transformed. Seb's excitement grew as he outlined his vision. He believed in this cause with every fiber of his being. But how? You've seen the surgeries and healthcare centers in the UK yourself. They are the primary care. The focus should be on building good quality primary care. It just needs political commitment, and that's why I have come to the capital. Is that all it takes? Yes. Someone needs to articulate the facts, and with the right legislation, the health system could be transformed in no time. In Britain, it was down to one man, Mr. Bevan, to do it. I am here to do it. A smile of admiration passed between them. Seb knew he needed influential allies. He had a plan and the right connections to make it happen. Your mother would help me arrange a meeting or a few of them. Well connected, isn't she? Mrs. Igala. Then from there, I could push things forward. You're serious about this? I have to be. He picked another orange from the plate, peeling it absent-mindedly as they continued their discussion. Their conversation had been intense but invigorating. The driver appeared at the door, signaling a temporary break. Madame, we are ready for the salon. Ah, don't go giving him health advice too, Samira. Samira laughed. Too late. He already got a dose of health education from you. Seb stood up, looking at her with a grin. When I come back, we will catch up more about England. Samira sat still as one of the young girls massaged shampoo into her thick curly hair. The warm water streamed down her scalp, but her mind was far from the salon. She thought about how Seb had stood up, grinned at her like a gentleman, and left. The memory played in her mind like a slow-motion reel. Had he really meant it when he said they would catch up later? Or was it just polite banter? Her heart fluttered at the thought of his hands over hers. She scolded herself internally. She barely knew him, yet her mind refused to let him go. The hairdryer hummed loudly over her head as she reached for a glossy celebrity magazine. She flipped through the pages idly, only to toss it onto the table with a sigh. The obsession with status, the endless parading of wealth, it sickened her. It had become a competition, a fixation. To appear in magazines, to flaunt luxury as if it were an achievement. She shook her head. These were the people she had grown up with. Privileged, Western educated, yet utterly blind to the struggles of the people around them. Her thoughts drifted to her mother. The way she spoke about Seb with such familiarity intrigued her. Was there more to their connection? Was she trying to set something up? Don't be silly, Her mother had snapped when she had hinted at the possibility, but Samira wasn't convinced. And then there was Seb's past, his wife leaving him, Blessing betraying him for Chief Mboli, all because he wasn't obsessed with money like the rest of them. That made her admire him even more. Samira thought of all the men she had met before. Wealthy, vain, obsessed with possessions. Even those who studied in Britain never seemed to bring back anything worthwhile. They flaunted their luxury, spending weekends in Dubai, boasting about their latest sports cars, and claiming their fathers would buy British football clubs. Seb was different. He cared about people. He wanted change. And, she realized with a small smile, she wanted to be a part of that change. With him, she grinned at her mother, then back at her own reflection in the salon mirror. For the first time in a long time, she felt inspired. A plan was forming in her mind. It was time to make a move. The next day, the weather had turned. The sky, once clear and bright, now loomed heavy with dark clouds. Then came the downpour, furious and unrelenting. Rain hammered against rooftops and pounded the roads, turning them into rivers of muddy water. The wind howled through the streets, sending people scurrying for shelter. Even the Aboki, with his small roadside stall, had vanished, abandoning his goods to the mercy of the storm. Cars splashed through flooded roads before grinding to a standstill. On Owerri Road, the traffic stretched endlessly, a motionless sea of honking vehicles. Some drivers, defeated, turned off their engines and stepped out into the knee-deep water. Others simply sat in silence, resigned to the chaos. There was no outrage, no protest, only weary acceptance. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, London basked in an unusually warm spring. In South America, heavy rains had caused similar devastation, but there, the people rioted, demanding answers. Their government blamed it on El Niño. In Igovia, no one bothered to ask why. It was just the way things were. Seb finally had his long-awaited meeting with the Minister of Health. It had been a grueling session, and Mrs. Igala had been by his side, supporting his every argument. As they stepped out of the minister's office, she let out a deep sigh. The exhaustion was evident in her eyes. The verdict? Nothing could be done without a change in legislation. The Medical Council needed more power to regulate the failing healthcare system, but that required a simple tweak in the law. Just one small amendment. The chairman of the Senate Committee on Health had the authority to make it happen. His name was Mr. Damajimo. Mrs. Igala had heard of him but never met him. The whispers about him were the same as those about most senators. Flamboyant, wealthy, but with little to show for it. And unfortunately, he was out of town until Monday. That meant Seb had to stay the weekend. That evening, after dinner, Mrs. Igala excused herself, leaving Seb and Samira alone in the living room. They had fallen into easy conversation about their time in England, sharing memories of university days and the stark contrast between life there and here. Laughter occasionally echoed through the hall as they reminisced about British weather, polite shopkeepers, and functioning public transport. Mrs. Igala, however, had work to do. She stepped into her bedroom, shut the door behind her, and walked to her dressing table. She removed her earrings one by one, then unclasped her necklace, setting her trinkets carefully in a velvet-lined jewelry box. She glanced at the stack of paperwork waiting for her attention, but before diving in, She reached for the latest celebrity magazine she had picked up earlier. As she flipped through its glossy pages, her eyes skimmed the familiar headlines. Wealthy men leaving their wives for younger women, mistresses flaunting their newfound riches, jilted spouses fading into obscurity. It was the same story, over and over again. With a sigh, she snapped the magazine shut. Her reflection in the vanity mirror caught her eye. She studied herself, her lips pressing into a thin line. She whispered under her breath, almost as if testing the words. Typical. Men do whatever they like. Much later, when Mrs. Igala stepped out of her room, the house was steeped in silence. Almost every light had been turned off, casting long shadows across the walls. The house help had already retired to their quarters, leaving the main house still and eerily quiet. She moved with slow, deliberate steps, ensuring that each door was securely locked, testing every window latch. It was a habit ingrained in her from years of careful living. Even in a mansion, one could not be too careful. Pausing at the window on the landing, her eyes drifted to the grand mansion across the way. Its Persian-inspired design reminded her of something she had once admired in Dubai. Intricate arches, expansive terraces, an air of wealth that seemed almost excessive. She had never seen its inhabitants, not once. The only proof of life was the fleet of luxury cars in the carport. Were they abroad, keeping this house as a mere symbol of their presence? She wouldn't be surprised. She knew better than most how the affluent operated. Palatial homes left empty, while countless people in the city struggled for a mere roof over their heads. And if the owner was a politician like her, then it was likely bought with stolen money, laundered wealth buried under foreign accounts and shell companies. If the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, ever came knocking, they would simply wait for the storm to pass. She sighed, drawing the curtain closed. Some things never changed. Before heading back to her room, Mrs. Igala stopped outside Samira's apartment. The door was closed, the lights turned off. All was quiet. She had thought to step inside, to wish her good night, perhaps exchange a few words before bed, but she changed her mind. Samira seemed at peace, as if she had never left home. After 7 years in England, she had slipped back into life here without hesitation. No worries, no uncertainties, just a young woman settling back into her place in the world. Mrs. Igala thought back to herself at that age. By then, she had been married, had 2 children, and had already divorced her first husband. Life had moved swiftly, carrying her from one obligation to another. There had been no time for reflection, no time to simply exist without the weight of expectation. The banking job that was being arranged for Samira would be ready soon. Perhaps then she would finally begin to carve out her own path. Mrs. Igala returned to her room, but sleep did not come. Thoughts of Seb drifted into her mind, unbidden yet persistent. Her heart knew things she dared not say aloud. In the quiet corners of her mind, she had allowed herself the most surreal encounters with him. The mind was a strange thing. It could create and act out the wildest desires, then tuck them away into secret chambers. Since the day she had met Seb at the Hotel Presidential, something about him had stirred her. His intelligence, his confidence, his unwavering passion for change. It had all left an imprint on her. He was not needy, not like the men who clung to wealth and power like a lifeline. No, he had something more. A man like Seb could resurrect something that had long been buried inside her. He had the power to set afloat a boat that had sunk with age. How many times had she imagined herself in his embrace, as the woman he loved, the one who could offer him everything he ever wanted? How many times had she wished that Seb would come to Abuja? She closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. Some desires were best left unspoken. She climbed into her bed, king-sized, luxurious, yet overwhelmingly empty. One half remained untouched, pristine, as if waiting for someone who would never come. Burying her face into the pillow, she stretched out her arm, fingers grazing the cold, unwrinkled sheets. She knew he was close, just a room away, but her heart ached for him to be here, beside her. What would it feel like? His skin warm against hers, his breath laced with the faint scent of aftershave, his hands tracing over her body. She imagined the weight of him above her, the strength in his arms as he held her, the pulse of his desire meeting her own. She would pull him close, pressing her body against his, unwilling to let go. The sheer thought of him, his sweat mingling with hers, sent shivers of anticipation through her. She wanted to experience it, again and again, until it became something she couldn't live without. She had never allowed herself to think like this before. But now she could not suppress it. She had him here in her house. So why was she still lying alone, lost in fantasy? Her body ached, not just with loneliness, but with a need she could no longer ignore. Women weren't supposed to feel this way, not women like her. But she had seen it in Nollywood movies. She had heard whispers among friends. Desire wasn't exclusive to men. She longed to be wanted by a man like him, to be seen, admired, cherished. She exhaled slowly, feeling the tension coil inside her. The war between restraint and surrender raged within her. But tonight, she knew which side would win. It was now or never. She knew Seb needed her. Without her, there would be no meeting with the Senate Committee Chairman on Health. He was smart enough to recognize that. That knowledge filled her with a quiet certainty. Seb would understand what she wanted, and he wouldn't resist. Why would he? She had power, influence, and the ability to make things happen for him. He wasn't a fool. He would do whatever it took to stay in her good graces. Her lips curled into a knowing smile as she threw back the sheets. The night was hers to command. The hallway was silent. She stepped lightly, her heartbeat thudding in her ears as she made her way toward his door. Just a short walk, a tap on the wood, and he would be there, waiting, wanting. Perhaps he felt the same way. Perhaps he too had been lying in bed, imagining what it would be like to have her in his arms. Blessing had abandoned him, and now the gods had placed him here, with her. That could not be mere coincidence. Seb was not like the others. He had a soul, an integrity that was rare in men. She had seen too many women like Blessing, gold diggers, parasites, women who took but never gave. She had seen it in her own life, in her own marriages. She had helped him today, used her influence to move mountains for his cause. He had been grateful. She had seen it in his eyes. Surely he owed her this. She tiptoed down the hallway, each step deliberate. The house was silent, save for the faint hum of the night. Her fingers wrapped around Seb's doorknob, ready to turn it, ready to take what she was certain was hers. Then she heard it. A soft sound at first, but unmistakable, a cry of pleasure. Her breath caught in her throat as she strained to listen. There it was again, a howl of rapture, and it belonged to Samira. She froze, her feet cemented to the floor. A tight, unbearable pressure built inside her skull. The world spun. When she finally managed to move, her legs felt like lead, dragging her back to her bedroom, where she collapsed onto the bed, her hands gripping her head in silent agony. She couldn't think. Waves of anger, resentment, and hurt crashed through her mind, each more violent than the last. She stood, pacing the length of her bedroom, arms crossed tightly against her chest. "In my own house," she muttered through clenched teeth. Occasionally, words slipped from her lips, sharp as daggers. "With Samira, I'll kill him." She tried to rationalize, but all she could feel was betrayal. The more she thought, the more she convinced herself that Seb was the one to blame. He had seduced her daughter. He had taken advantage of Samira's innocence. The image of him on top of her daughter burned into her mind. The beast, the user. The pain twisted deeper. She had always been in control. Men feared her. Yet, now, she felt discarded, cast aside. And worst of all, was it jealousy? Her lips trembled as she sank onto the bed, burying her face in her hands. Hot, bitter tears spilled onto her sheets. She sobbed until exhaustion overtook her. The early morning light filtered through the curtains, but there was no warmth in it. Mrs. Igala woke with a start, her heart pounding violently against her ribs. The memories of the night came rushing back, and with them, an overwhelming sense of dread. Then came the guilt. It sank deep into her stomach, gnawing at her insides. She felt physically sick. This was all her fault. If she had never agreed to help Chief Mande, never arranged that meeting with the health minister, Seb never would have been here, and this betrayal never would have happened. She needed to escape this nightmare. Seb had to leave as soon as possible. She must erase him from her life, erase every trace of what had happened. It was the only way.